Hey friends, I hope you're all happy and healthy and having the greatest day today. My name is Tara and this is my channel, True Crime Matters, where we talk about and analyze everything true crime. If you haven't already, please take a second to subscribe. It's just a free and easy way to help support the new channel, and I'd be so super grateful for that. So, quite a few updates since February in the University of Idaho student passings, especially this week. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about some key updates with the case and the suspect currently charged, Bryan Kohberger. Indicted by a secret grand jury, gag orders, an alibi. What exactly is going on here? Now, I did about an hour-long deep dive back in mid-February, so if you need to catch up on all the basics about the case, go ahead and watch that video, and then come back here. I'll link that down below if you're interested. But I'm just gonna hop right in and not waste any more time reviewing the case, since most people I know have a general idea. So today I'm gonna start with the gag order, since it's tied to so many other issues with the case lately. Now, the arrest warrant and criminal affidavit for Bryan were both issued on December 29th, 2022, and Bryan was arrested on December 30th. And within a week of the arrest, the prosecution and defense jointly agreed to a gag order. And the idea really is that it's there to protect everybody. It's there to balance the First Amendment right to free speech with the Sixth Amendment right for a defendant to receive a fair trial. Obviously, there is concern that too much commentary and publicity about the case can taint potential jurors with information they should not be otherwise hearing before trial. Just over a week ago, on June 9th, there was a hearing about the gag order in front of Judge John Judge. And in that hearing, it was literally being argued that this gag order is doing more harm than good. The judge heard arguments from Mr. Gray, an attorney for the family of one of the victims, Kaylee Gonsalves.
If you'll read the first paragraph, a lawyer who participates or has participated in the investigation or litigation of a matter shall not make extrajudicial statements. That is not me. It never has been me. It can't be me, because I'm not involved in the litigation.
I think the case law is quite clear that attorneys who are representing witnesses can be restricted to some degree, partly because they have access to particular information that should not be shared with the public. If I'm recalling correctly, the state has suggested or has determined that your clients are witnesses, potentially.
Let's just make it clear. The victim's family has never been involved in this investigation. They haven't really given us any information regarding the investigation of the case. But the most critical part of it is that the prosecution has never, ever interviewed the Gonsalves family. So how in the world would we ever be able to be witnesses in this case? And for what purpose would we be? If you're asking about for sentencing purposes, that's post-conviction. That's after he's been convicted on the case. Prior to trial, we're not any witnesses. And that falls into completely different statutes. They've never, ever told us in any way how we would be witnesses in this case, other than the conjecture that we may have potentially. That's not good enough to stop the free speech of the victim's family, as well as myself.
Help me understand what you think you can't say that you've already been saying.
I have no idea. I have no idea what it is.
You've been on the media and you've had interviews, so I'm kind of wondering how do you feel that you've been restrained in any way?
I think you're not seeing what the point is. What the point is that the court has issued a non-dissemination order that restricts First Amendment rights, that is overly broad. And I have not seen a poorer line of communication in my 22 years of practicing than the prosecution's office and the Gonsalves family. And I think it stems from, initially we were critical of the investigation. They wanted to find the person who did this. That's normal emotions. And then from that point on, it has been, we are the enemy. And as an officer of the court, I can tell you we have zero access.
Okay, so you're saying that the prosecutor's office has not shared information with your client?
Regarding the facts of this case, no, they haven't.
You're helping me understand what the issues are, so thank you.
This has never happened before, ever has it happened before, that a judge, Judge Marshall, has tried to silence the attorneys for victims.
Also in that hearing, a coalition of media organizations argued for the judge to vacate the gag order in its entirety.
It's our position that the non-dissemination order violates the Associated Press and the Media Coalition's First Amendment rights. Those constitutional violations are irreparable, so we would like our motions to be heard as soon as possible as well.
Only one thing I'll say about that. Irreparable harm goes both ways. It's a balancing test. And when your client says that he's arguing it as the First Amendment is absolute, is also troubling. So I would suggest that maybe the Associated Press needs to tone it down, just ratchet down a little bit. There's a lot of potential irreparable harm from media that is affecting a fair trial. So that is really concerning. I just want to remind everybody, we all, okay, judges, lawyers, journalists, media generally, have constitutional responsibilities to both. What I generally am seeing in the newspaper and the media is no discussion about the importance of the Sixth Amendment. It's just the First Amendment, which is very important.
In one of the many updates that just came down late this past Friday, June 23rd, Judge John Judge has denied the requests from the media and Mr. Gray to lift the gag order. However, he did significantly narrow the gag order, limiting it mostly to attorneys in the case. The judge said it was still legally necessary to restrict attorneys from making some statements about the case in order to preserve Bryan's right to a fair trial. So it really should be interesting to see what new information may come to light, maybe from fellow students and family members, now that that gag order has been loosened this much. Now, on June 6th, the defense had also submitted a request to limit media coverage, specifically requesting to keep cameras out of the courtroom. However, in a document filed just days ago on June 23rd, we see that the judge has formally denied that request, and cameras will be permitted in the court for now. Also, Bryan's lawyers filed court documents way back in April seeking to subpoena Bethany Funk, who is one of the surviving roommates. They wanted to call her to testify at the preliminary hearing, which was supposed to be in late June. And in those documents, his lawyers claim that, quote, portions of information Miss Funk has is exculpatory to the defendant.
This was a motion by and through his attorney, Ann C. Taylor, public defender, moves this court for a certificate to assist in securing the attendance of Bethany Funk as a witness on behalf of the defendant in this case. During the course of my investigation, it became known to me that Bethany Funk has information material to the charges against the accused killer. Portions of the information Ms. Funk has is exculpatory to the defendant. Ms. Funk's information is unique to her experiences and cannot be provided by another witness. Bethany Funk resides in the state of Nevada, and it's necessary to subpoena this witness because the witness's testimony is material and necessary to the state. Wow.
So it really makes you wonder what makes the defense think that she has information that would actually exonerate him. Either way, Bethany filed a motion in response to dismiss the subpoena.
These statements are conclusory, without support, and there's no further information or detail pertaining to the substance of the testimony, its materiality, or the alleged exculpatory information of Ms. Funk, or why it would be entertained at a preliminary hearing. There is no authority for an Idaho criminal defendant to summon a Nevada witness to an Idaho matter without a hearing. And there's no authority to summon a Nevada witness to an Idaho matter without a Nevada judge making a finding of materiality, necessity, and the lack of undue hardship. Even if Ms. Funk possesses exculpatory evidence, which remains unknown, there is no place or reason to present that evidence at a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing requires the state to offer competent evidence to support probable cause and convince the magistrate that a trial should be held, not the issue of innocence or guilt of the defendant.
Ultimately, she did win that fight. So at that time in early May, Bryan's defense team got back to work, preparing for the upcoming preliminary hearing, which lie just weeks ahead in late June. But suddenly,
we're getting right to breaking news. Just into our newsroom this morning, we learned the man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students has been indicted by a grand jury.
KRIM 2's Nicole Hernandez has been making calls on this all morning long for the last several hours. Nicole, what information can you share with us?
Tim Channing, so I just got off the phone with the Latah County District Court Clerk's office. They told me a grand jury indicted Bryan Kohberger on all counts. That means the grand jury found there was enough evidence in the case for it to go to trial. Now, Kohberger will have his arraignment on Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning. That is where he will likely enter his plea of either guilty or not guilty. This grand jury process replaces the preliminary hearing process that was scheduled for the end of June. The clerk's office could not tell me when the grand jury officially made this decision, but she did say the courts should be releasing official documents at some point.
Now, Idaho law requires that the prosecution prove there is enough evidence for trial, either with a grand jury or with a preliminary hearing. So, unlike a preliminary hearing held in court with the defense side present, this is a very one-side affair, the secret grand jury. Apparently, there's an old joke that says the prosecutor ought to be able to get the grand jury to indict a ham sandwich, which essentially is meant to show how one-sided it really is. Now, grand jurors see and hear only what prosecutors put before them. While technically prosecutors have an obligation to present this exculpatory evidence, there is really nothing aside from the prosecutor's conscience to enforce that rule. And by contrast, a preliminary hearing would allow the defense and defendant to see and cross-examine witnesses, which gives them a good preview of the prosecutor's entire case. Now, prosecutors often prefer grand juries because the proceedings are secret, whereas preliminary hearings are open to the public. That secrecy is meant to provide several benefits. Number one, it protects the defendant from more information getting out against them. And number two, it protects witnesses to speak more freely. But critics of secrecy rules say that a grand jury can run counter to the fairness and transparency of the justice system. So I find it interesting that the defense was making all of these preparations to call witnesses at the preliminary hearing, and they claimed they had this exculpatory evidence that would exonerate Bryan, but meanwhile, the state took that chance off the table. Now, obviously, skipping a preliminary hearing in a case like this can be a huge hindrance for the defense. As many of you know, once Bryan was indicted, of course, they had to move forward with his arraignment hearing back on May 22nd. And the big news that came out of that arraignment was that Bryan's lawyer stated that they were choosing to stand silent.
Ms. Taylor, is Mr. Kohberger prepared to plead to these charges?
Your Honor, we will be standing silent.
Okay, because Mr. Kohberger is standing silent, I'm going to enter not guilty pleas on each charge.
Apparently, it's an unconventional legal strategy known as standing mute, which relies on an Idaho criminal rule which requires a judge to then enter a not guilty plea on the defendant's behalf. But it also allows Bryan to remain silent to avoid verbally committing to either a guilty or a not guilty plea. Also, standing mute is a practical delay tactic, often combined with other means of postponing a trial. And now, lo and behold,
breaking news, murder suspect Bryan Kohberger wants to challenge his indictment. His defense team and the prosecution have not come to an agreement about what evidence to turn over to Kohberger that the grand jury saw. Kohberger now asking that his case be put on pause while he challenges the indictment.
it appears that the defense could now be laying the groundwork for a motion to dismiss the case against Bryan entirely. Understandably, ever since that grand jury indictment, the state and the defense have been going back and forth on what grand jury materials will be made available to Bryan's defense team. Now, the state has offered audio recordings and partial transcripts of the grand jury for the defense to review. However, get this. Bryan's lawyers have gone so far as to say they are certain there is evidence that would clear him of all charges. So they are requesting the court to force the state to turn over all grand jury proceedings for review. The defense is also arguing that after 6 straight months of intense media coverage in a very small community, they have a right to also determine how a grand jury was selected. Now, the state did recently shoot back again at the defense on June 16th in documents citing that Bryan's DNA was indeed a, quote, statistical match to DNA collected from the K-bar knife sheath found at the scene. However, in documents filed just this past Friday, June 23rd, the defense continued pushing for more information they say they have still not received from the state. Namely, they would like to know how and why police first identified Bryan as a suspect. They would like to see how police made that initial connection, which still remains a mystery. Although there were claims heard in the media that one of the IDs of one of the victims was found in one of the searches at Bryan's residence, the defense is still claiming there is no evidence that links the victims to Bryan. The defense further says that no matter what came first, the video of the Elantra or the genetic genealogy, the investigation has provided, quote, precious little, as there is no connection between Bryan and the victims, and further, a total lack of DNA evidence tying the victims to Bryan's car, home, or office. They also noted that DNA lab analysts were made aware of DNA from 2 other unidentified males from the victim's home, as well as DNA on a glove found right outside the home belonging to an unknown male. So the question is, who are those other males that remain unidentified, and do they have anything to do with this crime? You would think that police would have already checked out all of the other males that would have been in and out of the victim's home. However, at this time, all of that still remains a mystery. The defense also argued that since the state carries the potential of the death penalty, the state's failure to provide all requested materials restricts their ability to make a strong defense for Bryan. Meanwhile, while all of that is going on, the prosecution formally filed a request for discovery disclosure and alibi on May 23rd, and typically a defense would then have 10 days to submit their information with the court, but they can ask for an extension, which the defense has. On June 9th, the defense filed a motion for an exception to extend time to submit an alibi.
Bryan Kohberger, the man accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students, is requesting more time to provide an alibi. That motion was filed last week. Kohberger's attorneys are asking the court to give them more time to go through all the evidence. Kohberger's public defender says in the 6 months he's been in custody, prosecutors have turned over 51 terabytes of information to them, and that includes thousands of photographs, electronic phone records, and more.
Now, court documents show that Bill Thompson, prosecuting attorney, agrees that the amount of discovery in this case is enormous and that he does not have any problems with a reasonable extension to allow the defense to review. However, he requests the same courtesy should the defense submit an alibi. Now, of course, many of us immediately wonder how in the world things would have gotten this far in this case if Bryan did have a rock-solid alibi. I mean, obviously in most cases, someone is brought in for questioning first, and they can either choose to remain silent or usually tell investigators about their alibi. However, in this case, Bryan was arrested first based on evidence obtained by the prosecution. However, if we're being respectful of the U.S. justice system, right now we would still have to presume that Bryan is innocent. So then that begs the question, why hasn't he submitted an alibi by now if he's innocent? Well, it could really be that he's just being really cautious about his defense strategy, right? And it seems by the look of it that Bryan is remaining silent until he has all of this evidence he says that's missing. And then also he wants time to review the 51 terabytes of evidence that was delivered. So let's just say that you were accused of a crime that you know you didn't do, but the prosecution says they have your DNA. Okay, well, don't you think it would be a little more wise to figure out first what time the prosecution was claiming the crime was committed so that you could better form your alibi, round up your witnesses for that time frame, etc., and then submit that evidence? I mean, obviously in this case, the prosecution has already written in the affidavit the time frame of this crime. So that might be a bad example, but hopefully you get the general idea of what I'm trying to say. It makes total sense to me about why the defense is being so careful about formally submitting the alibi once they have more details. But of course, Bryan could just be the guy who committed this crime, and he's using his criminal justice knowledge alongside of his lawyers to play criminal justice chess, and that very well could be the case. I don't know. Now, all of that said, I am someone who likes to sort of see all sides of things. While I have heard plenty of evidence claims against Bryan, I have been very curious about what theories exist of other potential suspects. And for me, it was more the curiosity of what the defense may bring up at trial, not necessarily just random conspiracy theories. So I began to dig. And one thing I found in digging that has many people talking and still struggling with is the huge gap of time from when the crime was committed to when the police were called. Now, if you remember, the affidavit clearly states that Dylan heard crying and saw a strange man leave the house. And yes, it could have been that Dylan really was in this frozen shock phase and terrified as written in the affidavit. But there had been some claims that there were some substance issues going on in that house with the roommates. And many people have also heard this claim that there was like a Snapchat thread many people were on. And it's been said that many of those people knew about the 4 students having died before police actually arrived to the scene.
You wake up in the morning on November 13th. Can you just describe your day?
I just remember waking up and opening up my Snapchat, and there were dozens of Snapchat messages in all the group chats. When I kind of woken up a little bit more, I started to go through them because I did not want to have to read a lot of shit early in the morning. I was just sitting there scrolling through it, and then there it was. It was like, holy shit, did you guys hear about what happened? Blah, 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 blah. We were all talking about it. We all knew about it. And, my boss and my coworkers were texting me later, asking me, if everything was okay. And they had even heard about things. They heard, it was a shooting and stuff like that. So at the beginning, the very, very first messages where people were talking about the stabbings,
Okay.
or a stabbing had occurred. And then it changed to an OD. And it was just kind of weird, looking back on it, it changed to an OD so quickly, and, nobody questioned it. And, we didn't question it either because we knew there were drugs in that house. And, just genuinely thought, okay, they got a bad batch, and that's just what happened. Right, because you see it on the news. It happens in bigger cities.
You said you had to be to work at 9:30, so this would have happened before that?
No, yeah, well before 9 o'clock in the morning at least.
And I did just see it being reported just a few weeks ago that the prosecution is looking to get Snapchat data of those 4 victims from June 23rd to August 1st, which is pretty interesting because that was a few months before the crime. So no idea what any of that means, but it's possible that we'll find out at trial. And we have also heard claims that when police arrived, there was other people at the scene already that didn't live at that house.
Called 911. We're learning that the caller was not either of the 2 roommates who live in the house and apparently slept through the massacre. So the mystery is, who did make that 911 call to police, and how did that person make the gruesome discovery? I spoke with County Prosecutor Bill Thompson.
It's an essential part of the case. Whoever discovered the scene first, whoever initiated the contact with law enforcement is all part of understanding what occurred and the timeline of what occurred.
And one big story that does have facts that seem like they could be something the defense could look into is the Brent Kopaka story. Now, I encourage you all to go out there and do your own research. I am in no way making claims in this video. I'm just sharing some information I happened to stumble upon. Of course, this could be just absolutely nothing, and perhaps it won't be discussed at trial at all, but at this point, it does seem like it could be a likely avenue for the defense, and of course, only time will tell. Now, Brent Lee Kopaka was born on October 4th, 1986, to parents Darcy, Nixon, and John Kopaka. His parents would later divorce, and Brent went on to proudly serve in the U.S. Army from 2005 to 2009. And Brent was actually awarded the Purple Heart for his service in Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. Brent proved himself to be not only a man of great dedication, but also a selfless servant of the people of our nation. Family and friends described Brent as an outdoorsman and a loving, caring, and a very loyal person. He was said to never really like settling in one place. He liked to move around and make new friends wherever he went, while still staying in touch with old friends. But sadly, over the course of the past 16 years, it was said that Brent suffered from a traumatic brain injury he got while in combat in Afghanistan. And on top of that brain injury, it was said that he struggled with pretty severe PTSD, like many veterans.
PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is the response an individual has to experiencing or witnessing a terrifying or traumatic event. And symptoms of that can include flashbacks, nightmares, avoiding the stimulus. The symptoms in and of themselves usually start within 3 months after the traumatic event, may not actually appear till years later.
You know, I felt nervous around people. I would see and hear things that weren't there. I would reach for my weapon in the middle of the night. I turned to drugs just to numb the pain, stop me from being the person I needed to be at that moment for whoever needed me at that time, because I wanted to drown myself. People ask me questions, you know, a lot of times it's been the questions, you know, it's just some people come up to me and they ask me, oh man, how many people did you kill in Iraq? Or how did you feel? How was it? Somebody finds out I'm a veteran, or they talk to me and they're like, oh, good for you that you went over there and fought. It's like, no, it wasn't good for me. I came back damaged.
Now, as of last year, Brent was living at the Coffee House Apartments in Pullman, Washington. And for those of you who know a lot about the case, you know that Bryan Kohberger also lived in an apartment in Pullman, Washington. And on December 19th, just about a month after the University of Idaho tragedy, police responded to a report of a man allegedly threatening to kill his roommates in their apartment. Now, officers arrived and tried to speak to this man, now identified as Brent Kopaka. The following is the actual audio from the Brent Kopaka standoff with police. Viewer discretion is advised.
We need all units to come to 311 top floor.
If you could activate SWAT, we need people to respond for a barricaded male with a gun. We need all of you but one at 1000 Latah, top floor.
Also, we do have a negotiator here at work today.
Not sure if it's our unit, but someone peeking out of the window. Copy, take cover. We are contacted the subject who refused to leave, and now we have 6-8 back with us. Still making attempts to make contact, no success at this point. Ruben, Alex, we're going to start making contact. He's talking. We made contact with Brent. He said he was okay, but is failing to respond right now. I heard making contact and now not responding. Hold the air for now. He came outside, saw us, talked to us, and went back inside. He said he's not going to surrender. He says he does not have phone service. Ruben, Alex, if we could get a phone for delivery, that may be possible. Can we just donate a cell phone and give this guy? Yeah, that probably works. Chris, Alex. He has a phone, it just doesn't have service. We're going to have him call 911 and dispatch can patch him to you. Has he been told he's under arrest? Affirm. Sorry, Ola and Alex, are you guys in the hallway?
We're in the stairwell at the other end, just outside the hallway.
Copy. If he comes out of his room, we'll pursue that way and hold up as we get to the end of the hall. And then we'll pursue if he goes south. We just heard a yell from inside.
Home and buffers, and the search warrant has been granted.
Got too excited. I couldn't copy that.
Talk with me or the
0705, you can kill the phone. 0705, go ahead and ring it for about a minute. Covered. 0705, you can just keep with that every couple minutes. I don't know, 45 seconds on, 3 minutes off, and we'll talk to him and then call him again. 0605, Moscow's drone might be a good idea if we get the door held open. Ruben, Alex, we can use the drone we have here first. We were just thinking about putting this one in reserve, so we can hold off on that for a while. We can see mostly towards the back room, which we think is the suspect.
Copy. I've got a floor robot on the way.
Copy. Let us know if you'd like us to put ours inside.
06, can we turn the engine off on the armor?
Is that for 06? 0506 coming into the hallway with 60.
There's a light on in the dining area now.
406 to all units, less lethal, beanbag, beanbag, beanbag. We hear coughing outside.
Stand by, stand by.
Keep calling. He peeked out the door or the door and went back in to the area of the bathroom. You ready for us to hand deploy?
Based on coughing and noises over here, sounds like he is in the room that he launched into.
07, start calling in.
He's moving and throwing stuff in the unit. 06, it sounds like he's moving furniture to barricade himself further.
He's throwing stuff, breaking the window.
0567, there was just a gun rack.
A gun in there, making threats. You were covered, go again. I hear him racking the slide of a gun inside, yelling threats.
Shot fired, shot fired. All officers are up on the outside. 44 status.
I'm up. Looks like he might have fired into the air inside. 0605, I'm inclined to let him settle down. I'm not sure we want to push him out. Shooting around. 0705, can you hold the phone? 0605, are you able to communicate with him at all? We hear him yelling.
I'll give it a shot. Another shot fired. 6806, stairwell team okay?
Affirm, I have eyes on.
He's saying he'll be there a day and a half until we come get him. He's talking to himself.
Looking through the window on the armor, I just saw his head in the bedroom. There's some more items out the broken window.
Are you guys able to communicate with him outside, or is that just him talking to himself?
That's just him talking to himself at this point. I talked to him a while ago. 0506 is continuing to throw things at the window and window frame. Another shot.
Affirm, that one sounded like it exited the window.
I saw some movement on the window treatment.
Does WSU have anybody who can go up to Stevenson? Those people should probably move away from the windows if bullets are exiting.
0506, seems like he's talking to himself still. What do you think the next step is?
I can't understand you.
Nothing's changed here. Do you want to think about NFTD?
406 to other units, less lethal, beanbag, beanbag, beanbag. Home 40. 456, there was another shot fired. And there was another shot after the one advised by 56. He's been staying in the bedroom below the window frame. I can see him throw things, but I've not seen him.
He's in the living room now. Exited the bedroom with a gun. Black handgun in his hand. He came out again and went back inside.
0656, are you back in JRD?
Also, 06 is inside JRD.
56, copy.
He's talking to himself now out in the hallway. 0605, it sounds like he was showing us the pistol on purpose.
406 406, another shot.
Foreman 456, he just said, I'd murder you.
406, another shot fired. Another shot. Sounded like they went out the window.
Can we tell what he's shooting at?
Negative. He's staying low in the window. There seems to be an upward trajectory towards the sky up.
0568, is that a different caliber he's shooting in there now?
It sounds like he's shooting a smaller caliber gun, like a 22.
Copy, that's what we're hearing.
Pullman 456, 3 more shots.
He hit the vehicles that were in. He's aiming at us now in the armor. Another round. Sounds like it's towards the parking. And another one that sounded more inside, maybe.
I know the talking's not having much effect, but he's yelling a lot about having his cigarettes, his wallet, his phone. So I don't know if you could work that into a negotiation if there or not. How firm we've been trying. It seems like whenever we start talking to him, that's when he starts shooting.
0668, immediately before that shot, he said something like, I'm high and I'll hit you.
You believe it hit Stevenson's tower?
He just said he's gonna go start killing people now, starting with the people outside.
Also, I think it sounds like he's reloading.
I can definitely hear rounds being fed into a magazine.
Shot fired out the window. Appears to be horizontal.
After that shot, he said, did I get him?
Muzzle out the window. Horizontal shot fired out the window. Appears to be dying down a bit.
We should probably get the whole building evacuated now.
If you have someone who can get some evidence tape up on the north side of Latah Street to keep vehicles and people out of there, or media starting to show up.
Wrap up and go home.
We need to make sure that anything that was thrown out of that window and into the parking lot is preserved as well. So we may need to consider making a perimeter in the parking lot.
Do you have somewhere for the media to go?
You can tell media that they can go to the PD. We're working on some release information and we'll be able to communicate there.
Copy.
All right, are we ready?
Yes.
Okay.
You guys ready? Yep.
All right, thank you. So on December 14th, 2022, at about 8:37 p.m., our officers were dispatched to the 1000 block of Latah Street for a weapon offense. Officers learned a male in his 30s was threatening to kill his roommates. The roommates were evacuated from the apartment, and police officers attempted to speak with that male, who barricaded himself inside of his apartment. Pullman PD crisis negotiators and the Whitman County Regional SWAT team responded. The suspect began firing from his apartment. The area was evacuated. After unsuccessful negotiations, his escalating behavior, and a continued danger to the public and others, the male was shot by a member of the Whitman County Regional SWAT team. The suspect was found deceased when the Whitman County Regional SWAT team cleared the apartment. On behalf of the Whitman County Regional SWAT team, Pullman PD has requested assistance of the Washington State Patrol to investigate the officer-involved shooting. Further information will be released by the Washington State Patrol. Per RCW 43102, this investigation must be completely independent of the agency whose officer was involved in the use of deadly force. The Whitman County Regional SWAT team is made up of officers from the Whitman County Sheriff's Office, Pullman Police Department, and the WSU Police Department.
Now, at the time that this was happening, several students in the area couldn't believe their ears about what was going on. I mean, this is normally a very quiet town, and they couldn't help but immediately be reminded of the last traumatic event a shelter in place from just a month prior. The same sort of fear they felt when they heard about the 4 student victims from the University of Idaho. And many of those people immediately saw a connection and thought that maybe Brent could have had a previous breakdown or been the person responsible for that horrific crime.
And some tense moments at Washington State University tonight. Students are back in their dorms after being evacuated in the middle of the night last night. They were woken up in the middle of the night because of a nearby crime scene. Crime 2 has actually been at the Palouse and on the Palouse since 6 o'clock this morning, covering this breaking news. Janelle Finch is picking up our coverage now with reaction from students tonight. Janelle?
Earlier today, we weren't exactly sure what apartment the situation happened in, but now in the dark of night, only one apartment on the 3rd floor is shining bright. So we can potentially assume that that is where the situation happened. And as you can see, there is still crime tape up here at the scene just hours after police shot and killed a man during a SWAT standoff. Wednesday night, WSU students living near campus say they were preparing for their last day of finals.
We had been finishing final papers in my apartment. We finished around, they were due at midnight, right? Midnight, yeah. So we finished around midnight. We were leaving to go get food.
But when university students Kylie Canyon Brewer and Madison Barbon walked out the door, they ran into an unexpected situation.
We walked out, she walked out first. There was just a ton of people in the hallway, cops.
Pullman police responded to their neighbor's apartment at the complex just off of Stadium Way around 8:40 p.m. According to Pullman police, a man in his 30s was threatening to kill his 2 roommates. Police evacuated the building, and WSU alerted students to shelter in place. Police say the suspect's behavior escalated, and he began firing gunshots in his apartment.
At the time, I thought it was just really just fireworks or something like that, but very startling to hear.
Students living on campus nearby say it was scary to know how close they were to an active SWAT situation. The Pullman police chief says after the suspect would not comply, a SWAT member shot and killed him.
As a student, it's very scary. You don't really know, who people are sometimes, especially it being in a really big school. So you never really know if you're close to danger or, where the safe places are on campus. So it's very startling and very scary for sure.
An hour and a half after the university told students to shelter in place, they were told the situation was all clear. Still, students say they can't help but think about recent crimes on the Palouse, including last month's Idaho murders.
It's very scary to, the reality of what's going on right now.
Pullman police say Washington State Patrol is taking over further investigation and communication.
Incredibly, some of you guys may recall during the first police body cam of the traffic stop with Bryan and his father in Indiana on December 15th, after the officer says he pulled them over for tailgating, Bryan's father says they were leaving WSU because of a mass shooting, and Bryan interjects and agrees. Then come to find out, that is the incident they were referencing. So technically, that incident was already a part of this case in a strange sort of way.
Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're standing for
What's WSU?
University, basically. That is SWAT team area.
So I'm having a hard time reading because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University, and you're going there? Oh.
We're going to be going to today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're slightly driving hours.
Hours, days.
Hours driving. Well,
yeah. Okay. And what did you say about some SWAT team thing? Or
there was a mass shooting and everything.
Where? Interesting.
Well, it's horrifying. He's going to the university, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So y'all work at the university there?
Actually, do work.
Oh.
PhD in criminal.
Okay. Okay. I hadn't heard about that incident. Just yesterday, or?
This happened this morning. About an hour and a half ago, they're still wrapping up investigating. I'm not sure there's 2 shooters because they did a shoot study.
I see.
Then we don't know about that. Exactly.
Interesting.
And it has been reported that as of June 1st, the Washington police have issued a statement that the shooting is still under investigation. So you may wonder, what are they still investigating? And does it have anything to do with the University of Idaho case? Now, these following things I'm going to say, I'm not really sure if they're true or not. It's been really hard to dig with this information and find out more on this, but it has been said by several sources that Brent also actually drove a silver Hyundai Elantra, which some people are saying could potentially look white under certain circumstances, like at night on a grainy camera. And we know that police announced pretty early on they were looking for an occupant or occupants of a white Hyundai Elantra, 2011 through 2013, but Bryan actually drove a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra. It has also been said that Brent lived on campus at WSU, but worked as an IT tech at Idaho State University. Also, something interesting to note that is a fact, Brent's obituary states that he was Army 82nd Airborne in Afghanistan, and the lead investigator of the University of Idaho case, Brett Payne, was also Army 82nd Airborne. And by the way, this lead investigator only has 2 years of law enforcement experience. Just a weird coincidence? I don't know. Now, all of that said, this Brett story could just purely be coincidental, and you would think that police would have already looked thoroughly through Brent before they narrowed in on Bryan later. But again, it could be an avenue that the defense tries to bring up at trial, and we still don't know. Maybe Bryan knew Brent. In fact, one thing that we do know for a fact, that the two lived about 5 minutes away from each other, so there is a chance that they did know each other. Only time will actually tell. Or will it? But I really do wonder what the hell set Brent off that day. Traumatic brain injury and PTSD aside, he'd lived for 16 years with it, so it definitely made me wonder what could have triggered the events that day. Ugh, this case is truly awful, and it seems like it's getting more bizarre by the day. So many lives have been destroyed by this, and it's not just those 4 students and their loved ones. It has really affected many of those local communities and really so many people around the world. And I don't care what anybody says, Bryan's family is suffering too. Their lives are destroyed, which was completely beyond their control. It was said that one of Bryan's sisters who worked in mental health was either forced to quit or voluntarily left her job in mental health, which is really terrible when you think about, losing your job, your life's passion, over something your sibling did which you had no control over. One thing I do know from personal experience is that it's really tough to be related to somebody who is associated with committing a crime. So I do have a lot of sympathy for what the Kohbergers are going through as well. Now, all of that said, of course, if Bryan is truly guilty of these crimes, he does need to pay the price, which will never make up for the lost lives. So what do you all think? Do you think the prosecution has the wrong guy? Do you think that there's actually exculpatory evidence that exists? Or do you think Bryan is just trying to blow smoke and buy himself some more time? Anyway, that is all I have for now, but I will definitely keep updating you guys on this mind-blowing case. As of now, the tentative trial date is set for October 2nd. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching. Be careful out there.